The East India Squadron, or East Indies Squadron, was a squadron of American ships which existed in the 19th century. It focused on protecting American interests in the Far East, while the Pacific Squadron concentrated on the western coasts of the Americas and in the South Pacific Ocean. Part of the duties of this squadron was serving with the Yangtze River Patrol in China. The East India Squadron was established in 1835 and existed until it became part of the Asiatic Squadron in 1868. History. Shortly before Senator Levi Woodbury of New Hampshire became Secretary of the Navy in 1831, Edmund Roberts had sent him a letter detailing the neglected state of Far Eastern commerce and whaling. Near the end of that year, American pepper trader Friendship returned to her home port of Salem to report that Sumatran pirates had killed the first officer and 2 crewmen, and plundered the cargo. In response to public outcry, President Andrew Jackson dispatched the Potomac on the first of what were to be 2 punitive expeditions to Sumatra. The sloop of war Peacock was also dispatched, and, on the recommendation of Woodbury, carried Roberts as envoy to Kochi, China, Siam and Muscat, to negotiate treaties to place American commerce on a surer basis, and on an equality with that of the most favored nations. Roberts succeeded with Siam and Muscat. Peacock returned in 1835–37 with Dr. W. S. W. Ruschenberger bearing ratifications of those treaties. Peacock, which in 1828 had been broken down and rebuilt as an exploration vessel, joined the United States exploring expedition in 1838. East India Squadron Columbia and John Adams had also joined the circumnavigating expedition, and, without having to detour, executed the Second Sumatran expedition. Formation. Except for whaling and pepper, U.S. trade with the Far East was limited, but for those who risked long voyage to trade fur, sandalwood, and cotton goods for Chinese silks and tea, the results were very profitable. Indeed, stories about the riches of Far East created the national myth about the vast potential of the China market. In an effort to turn the myth into reality, the U.S. sent envoy Roberts to Kochi, China in 1835 aboard the Peacock, escorted by schooner Enterprise under command of Commodore Edmund P. Kennedy. First called at the port of Canton, and Roberts' account gives a vivid description of the state of affairs there. Kennedy subsequently established the East India Squadron. First Opium War. Some Americans in China suffered during the First Opium War of 1839 as Chinese indignant about British opium traders failed to distinguish between English-speaking people of European ancestry. Commodore Kearny was given command of a squadron consisting of the 42-year-old frigate Constellation and the sloop Boston. Kearny arrived in China in March 1842 and the Opium War soon ended. Kearny first learned of the Treaty of Nanking when he arrived in Hong Kong. Kearny observed the treaty's provisions opening 5 Chinese ports to British trade, and sought equal trading opportunity for Americans. Viceroy of Guangzhou offered Kearny a treaty giving Americans fair treatment. Kearny did not have authority to sign such a treaty, but tactfully informed Ke agreement would be forthcoming as soon as authorized negotiators arrived. Caleb Cushing reached China in 1844, and the Treaty of Wanghia was signed on the 2nd of July. Opening of Japan. In December 1845, Commodore James Biddle exchanged ratifications of the Treaty of Wanghia at Poontong, a village outside Guangzhou. The treaty was the first treaty between China and the United States. On July 20, 1846, he anchored with the 2 warships USS Columbus and USS Vincennes in Uraga Channel at the mouth to Edo Bay in an attempt to open up Japan to trade with the United States, but was ultimately unsuccessful. Biddle delivered his request that Japan agree to a similar treaty to that which he had just negotiated with China. Biddle eventually received the shogunate's response and was told that Japan forbade all commerce and communication with foreign nations besides that of the Dutch. Also, he was informed that all foreign affairs were conducted through Nagasaki and that his ships should leave Uraga immediately. In 1852, Commodore Matthew C. Perry embarked from Norfolk, Virginia for Japan, in command of a squadron in search of a Japanese trade treaty. Aboard a black-hulled steam frigate, he ported Mississippi, Plymouth, Saratoga, and USS Susquehanna at Uraga Harbor near Edo, modern Tokyo, on July 8, 1853. His actions at this crucial juncture were informed by a careful study of Japan's previous contacts with Western ships and what could be known about the Japanese hierarchical culture. He was met by representatives of the Tokugawa shogunate who told him to proceed to Nagasaki, where there was limited trade with the Netherlands and which was the only Japanese port open to foreigners at that time. See Sakoku. Perry returned in February 1854 with twice as many ships. Finding that the delegates had prepared a treaty embodying virtually all the demands in Fillmore's letter, Perry signed the Convention of Kanagawa on March 31, 1854 and departed, mistakenly believing the agreement had been made with imperial representatives. The agreement was made with the shogun, the de facto ruler of Japan. Johanna Expedition. The Johanna Expedition was a naval operation that occurred in August 1851 during the American anti-slavery patrols in the Indian Ocean. It began in response to the seizure of the merchant ship Maria and her captain, a man named Moores, in the small Sultanate of Johanna. The United States Navy sent the sloop of war USS Dale, under Captain William Pearson, to free Moores and to demand compensation for the incident. When the Sultan refused, the Americans briefly bombarded a fort and blockhouse protecting the harbor of Matashamudu. Anti-piracy operations. In July 1855, Chinese pirates in the Hong Kong area captured 4 merchant ships, apparently of British subject. In response, on 4 August 1855, armed boats from the East India Squadron frigate USS Powhatan and the Royal Navy sloop of war HMS Rattler attacked the pirates at the Battle of Taiho Bay. HMS Eaglet towed the boats into position, which then proceeded to destroy 20 of 36 junks. 7 merchant ships were also rescued. An estimated 500 pirates were killed or wounded and over 1,000 taken prisoner, compared to an Allied loss of 9 dead and about a dozen wounded. Second Opium War. The United States would see action again during the Second Opium War from 1856 to 1860. 4 of the squadron's ships were involved in at least 2 battles. At the beginning of the war, the United States Navy frigate USS San Jacinto and 2 sloops of war, USS Portsmouth and USS Levant, launched an attack against a series of Chinese forts along Pearl River. The engagement became known as the Battle of the Pearl River Forts and was fought in 1856. The second involvement of an East India Squadron ship was during the Second Battle of Taku Forts. In 1859, the American warship USS Powhatan assisted an Anglo and French attack by bombarding the Taku forts. No further engagements between Chinese and American forces during the war are known to have happened, though American citizens living in Canton fought as militia at the 1856 Battle at Canton. Bombardment of Knhon. On June 30, 1861, USS Saginaw, under James F. Schenck, silenced a fort at the entrance to Knhon Bay, Cochinchina. This was after a Vietnamese artillery battery had fired upon her while she was searching for the missing boat and crew of an American merchant bark named Myrtle. After an engagement lasting just under an hour, the Chinese fort was destroyed and a large explosion was observed by the Americans. It became the only battle of the Cochinchina campaign involving the United States, which deployed the East India Squadron to protect American interests in the region. Formosan Expedition. Following the rover incident of March 1867, in which the American bark rover was wrecked and massacred by the Paiwan people of southern Formosa, the East India Squadron under Rear Admiral Henry H. Bell launched a punitive expedition in retaliation. On June 18, 1867, 181 officers, sailors and marines from 2 screw sloops of war landed with the intention of destroying the hostile threat. After 6 hours of marching through the hot tropical Formosan mountains and after several skirmishes, the Americans turned back to their ships. The expedition failed after the death of an American commander and the loss of several men due to the humid climate. They boarded USS Wyoming and USS Hartford and then set sail for Shanghai. A year later, the squadron was merged into the new Asiatic Squadron. Ships. USS Powhatan, under Commander William J. McClerney, was assigned to the East India Squadron and arrived on station via Cape of Good Hope 15 June 1853. Her arrival in Chinese waters coincided with an important phase of Commodore Matthew C. Perry's negotiations for commercial relations with the Japanese and the opening of 2 ports. She was Perry's flagship during his November visit to Wampa. On 14 February 1854 she entered Yedo Bay with the rest of the squadron, and the Treaty of Kanagawa was signed on her deck on 31 March 1854. Assigned to the East India Squadron under Commodore Matthew Perry, the USS Macedonian with Captain Joel Abbott in command, was one of the 6 American ships arrayed off Uraga, Japan. 13 February 1854, during Perry's second visit to negotiate the opening of Japan to foreign trade, after completing her trials, which she began in January 1851. The side-wheel steamer USS Susquehanna sailed on 8 June for the Far East to become flagship of the East India Squadron. The USS Dolphin got underway 6 May 1848 to join the East India Squadron, protecting American citizens in Asiatic waters. Recommissioned on 12 August 1850, USS Saratoga got underway on 15 September and proceeded to the Western Pacific for service in the East India Squadron. USS Levant sailed 13 November for Rio de Janeiro, the Cape of Good Hope, and Hong Kong, where she arrived to join the East India Squadron 12 May 1856. On 1 July she embarked the U.S. Commissioner to China for transportation to Shanghai, arriving 1 August, departing Norfolk 4 August. The USS Germantown sailed via the Cape of Good Hope to Ceylon, where on 22 December she joined Flag Officer Josiah Tapnall's East India Squadron off Point de Gala. For 2 years she cruised Far Eastern waters and visited the principal ports of China and Japan, where she found uniform-friendly reception, as the squadron guarded American interests in the Orient. Sailing via the Cape of Good Hope, she returned to Norfolk in April 1860. After a 4-day stop at Singapore, where Commodore Armstrong relieved Commodore Joel Abbott in command of the East India Squadron, the frigate USS San Jacinto reached the bar off the mouth of the Menam. Later the Chao Phraya River. The new side-wheel steamer USS Saginaw sailed from San Francisco Bay on 8 March 1860, headed for the Western Pacific, and reached Shanghai, China, on 12 May. She then served in the East India Squadron for the most part cruising along the Chinese coast to protect American citizens and to suppress pirates. She visited Japan in November but soon returned to Chinese waters. On the 30th of June 1861, she silenced a battery at the entrance to Qianhon Bay, Kochi, China, which had fired upon her while she was searching for the missing boat and crew of American bark Myrtle. On the 3rd of January 1862, Saginaw was decommissioned at Hong Kong. Commanders. Successive commanders-in-chief of the East India Squadron were as follows: Edmund P. Kennedy, the 3rd of March 1835 to 10 October 1837. George C. Reed, the 14th of December 1837 to 13 June 1840. Lawrence Kearney, the 4th of February 1841 to 27 February 1843. Foxhall A. Parker, Sr., the 27th of February 1843 to 21 April 1845. James Biddle, the 21st of April 1845 to 6 March 1848. William Shoebrook, the 6th of March 1848 to 13 May 1848. David Geisinger, the 13th of May 1848 to 1 February 1850. Philip Voorhees, the 1st of February 1850 to 30 January 1851. John H. Ollick, the 31st of May 1851 to 20 November 1852. Matthew C. Perry, the 20th of November 1852 to 6 September 1854. Joel Abbott, the 6th of September 1854 to 15 October 1855. James Armstrong, the 15th of October 1855 to 29 January 1858. Josiah Tatnall, the 29th of January 1858 to 20 November 1859. Cornelius Stribling, the 20th of November 1859 to 23 July 1861. Frederick A. Engel, the 23rd of July 1861 to 23 September 1862. Cicero Price, the 23rd of September 1862 to 11 August 1865. Henry H. Bell, the 11th of August 1865 to 11 January 1868. Served in squadron. Also serving in the squadron at one time were Thomas O. Selfridge, John Pope, Edward Terry. Served in the sloop Germantown, attached to the East India Squadron, from 1857 to 1859. William M. Wood served as fleet surgeon with the East India Squadron from 1856 to 1858. Montgomery Sicard, James Glynn, Andrew Hulford commanded USS Portsmouth on November 20 to 21, 1856. Foote led a landing party that seized the barrier forts at Canton, China, in reprisal for attacks on American ships. See also. Additional reading. Long. David Foster. C. 1988. Chapter 9. Gold Braid and Foreign Relations. Diplomatic Activities of U.S. Naval Officers. 1798 to 1883. Annapolis. Naval Institute Press. pp. 207 ff. ISBN 9780870212284. Retrieved April 29, 2012. Lay Summary. February 1990.